Hello there.
Hello there, and welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn, and the Disney Plus Kenobi series was quite the disappointment.
Oh, that's disappointing. Wow, who does that?
In this video, I'm going to explain exactly why the Kenobi series was such a disappointment and how it could have been great and potentially even saved Star Wars. We'll also be discussing how this series was not only a slap in the face to the fans, but how it majorly disrespected the characters of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. This is how Obi-Wan Kenobi was wasted. So when they announced that Ewan McGregor was coming back as Obi-Wan Kenobi, I was over the moon freaking excited. It was probably the most excited I'd been about Star Wars since seeing Revenge of the Sith in theaters back in 2005. I grew up on the prequels, and Obi-Wan Kenobi was and still is my favorite Star Wars character. I had all the Obi-Wan action figures, I was Obi-Wan for Halloween, and when my friends and I played Star Wars on the playground, I always had dibs on Kenobi. Hell, my cat is named Obi-Wan. Now, look, all respect in the world to the late great Alec Guinness, but Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan has always held a very special place in my heart. I looked up to him, and as a kid who grew up on the prequels, in a lot of ways, he was my Luke Skywalker. So when they announced that they were going to bring him back to don the Jedi robes once more, alongside Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader, I was ready for something that I was certain would be the greatest Star Wars since the original trilogy, but boy was I wrong.
I was wrong.
So I've garnered a bit of a reputation online as a Disney Star Wars defender, a shill if you will, all because, God forbid, I liked The Acolyte.
Torches! Get your torches!
Now, these claims that I'm a Disney bootlicker don't really hold water. I mean, yes, I've liked a lot of what Disney has done, but I've also disliked a lot of what they've done as well. It's almost as if I'm nuanced. So, for example, I didn't like The Last Jedi, I hated The Rise of Skywalker, and I felt like the Ahsoka series really insisted upon itself.
It insists upon itself, Lois.
What?
It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
But my most loathed project to come out of the Disney era of Star Wars was the absolute clusterfuck that was the Kenobi series. And it's not even so much that I think it's the worst thing they've done, but it's the most disappointing thing they've done. How the same studio that made Andor, The Mandalorian, Rogue One, and The Force Awakens cranked out this steaming pile of rushed, poorly written, badly shot, shittily directed, atrociously lit YouTube fan film-esque of a series is beyond me. Now, don't get me wrong, Kenobi isn't the worst Star Wars, it's far better than, say, the Book of Boba Fett, but what makes the Kenobi series so particularly offensive is that it had so much potential, so much wasted potential. And one of the first issues with this series is the fact that it was a series at all. This thing should have been a movie, and it should have been a movie with Force Awakens level hype for the Star Wars franchise, and I guarantee you, had they put this thing in theaters, it would have been. But instead, it was just another sloppy pump and dump to boost a streaming service. So let's start there. This series' first sin was it being a series at all. This is a story about Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine, this lone Jedi living in solitude following the galaxy-wide slaughtering of the Jedi Order and the formation of the Empire following the Clone Wars. This was a story about Obi-Wan having his grand rematch with his former apprentice turned evil and greatest movie villain of all time, Darth Vader. And let me say that again, movie villain. Darth Vader and Obi-Wan are two of the most popular characters in all of cinema. Their rematch deserved to be featured on the silver screen, especially when you have the same actors who played them in the Star Wars movies returning to the roles in an era of nostalgia being all the rage in the film industry. But in all their brilliance, they decided to warp this should-have-been movie into a half-baked yet simultaneously overdone streaming pile of garbage. We had been waiting years for the story of Obi-Wan's time on Tatooine between episodes 3 and 4, and I'd been waiting pretty much my entire life. I mean, the majority of my action figure play sessions were about Obi-Wan living on Tatooine, hiding from Darth Vader and the Empire, watching over Luke, and learning from Qui-Gon's Force Ghost. And Obi-Wan was in hiding for nearly 20 years. That's a lot of time to tell a lot of really great stories, which could of course be an argument to make it a series, but no, I think that's all the more reason reason that they should have made it a movie trilogy. A Kenobi movie trilogy with Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan, going up against Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader could have made up for the lackluster mess that was the sequel trilogy. This trilogy of Obi-Wan films, if handled correctly, could have saved Star Wars. It could have appeased all fans, both old and new, prequel lovers, original trilogy lovers, Filoni heads, Disney era appreciators. Everyone would have been on board had this movie been done right. Well, okay, not everyone. There's always going to be a segment of the fandom that isn't pleased with anything because they decided beforehand that they weren't going to like it, but you know, forget them. They're fake fans anyway. But I do really believe that this trilogy could have bridged the massive divide we're seeing right now in Star Wars fandom, and it could have brought enough of both the old and the new, combining nostalgia for the originals and for the prequels along with the new Disney era. We were so fortunate to have Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor willing and able to return at the perfect time to essentially make sequels to the prequels. A Kenobi trilogy could have cleared $1 billion box office per movie easy, and then after a theatrical run, you can drop it exclusively on your streaming service. You see, this series, it fell victim to a brief era following the pandemic where studios thought movie theaters were dead and streaming was their new cash cow. Little do they know, had they not abandoned movie theaters, the industry would have and could have bounced back. But with moronic moves like making the Kenobi series a series at all, instead of a movie just to get subscribers to Disney Plus, we're seeing the death of movie theaters simultaneously occurring with underwhelming streaming numbers. The fact of the matter is that people are losing interest in TV and movies at all and turning to other things like TikTok and, well, YouTube videos. There's also the Solo of it all. After that Solo movie underperformed at the box office, Lucasfilm and Disney got spooked for making standalone legacy character films.
Why?
But what they were too dense to see was the stark difference between doing a character origin story with a brand new actor in a classic role after the original actor just played him 2 years prior. Compare that to a returning actor from the prequels who's played the character before, he's associated with the character, and he's not returning for some origin movie, no, but returning for what could have been a chapter of the Star Wars saga starring the top billed actor from Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3, with, of course, Darth Vader back as the trilogy's villain. I mean, how the hell do you pass up the opportunity to have Darth Vader as the main antagonist of a trilogy of Star Wars movies that wouldn't have felt forced at all because the story would literally call for his presence? Darth Vader, even more so than Darth Maul, would have been the most obvious choice as the villain of this film. And look, this series being a series and not a movie isn't the only problem. The other problem, perhaps the biggest problem, is that it just wasn't that good. Had this series been good, I'm talking Game of Thrones level good, I wouldn't be making this video. Had this series consisted of hour-long episodes that didn't look like they were shot on an iPhone in someone's garage and had a script that didn't feel like it was written in an afternoon and had more of this,
and that is why you will always lose,
and less of this,
They know what they're doing, Leia.
you called her Leia.
we could have had a huge hit on our hands. Ewan McGregor brought it in this series. He came back after getting dogged on for years about the prequels. He delivered a phenomenal and dedicated performance. Hayden also delivered a really great performance, and they put their hearts back into these roles, but unfortunately, they were the only ones willing to give it their all. Lucasfilm and Disney, however, it just feels like they phoned it in. It felt cheap, it felt rushed, yet also drawn out, and it just felt, I don't know, bare? Fake. It didn't feel like Star Wars. The first encounter between Vader and Kenobi is in this really Earth-looking construction yard, and it's just awful. You have an awesome line like this,
I am what you made me.
but you can't see a damn thing, and then Obi-Wan just keeps pacing around while Vader follows him, and then Vader's about to get some brutal revenge on Kenobi, but then he just lets him escape. It's just really sloppy. And then of course there's the Reva of it all. Now look, a lot of pieces of shit here on the internet have attacked this actress with racist and sexist attacks, and it goes without saying that that is not okay. But this character and her connection to Vader and her chasing Luke, it was just all no, it was unnecessary and it was a distraction. I wanted to see Obi-Wan save Luke from a Tusken Raider attack, not Luke being chased by a red lightsaber wielding Sith Inquisitor that the filmmakers had to make sure young Luke never actually saw to keep from breaking canon. It was just all so lazy and ridiculous. Now again, the reason I'm beating up on this show is because it had so much potential. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen delivered stellar performances. The young actress who played Leia was great, and I loved seeing Obi-Wan and Leia getting to interact. Joel Edgerton being back as Owen was also fantastic, and I loved seeing the tension between him and Kenobi. And that's what this series should have been. Kenobi watching over Luke, protecting him from afar, and Vader personally hunting Kenobi down. We didn't need any of this other filler bullshit. Again, we needed more of this
Where is he?
and less of this.
I just spoke with Lord Vader. He asked me to lead the hunt.
Now, another important thing that needed to be in this movie was Obi-Wan suffering from PTSD, and I will give the series credit for focusing on that. Now, this movie or trilogy that I'm proposing should have not only focused on Darth Vader hunting down a recluse Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan doing his damnedest to keep Luke and Leia hidden, but you also need to intercut it with flashbacks to Obi-Wan training a young Anakin between the events of Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, and then of course include flashbacks to a live-action rendition of the Clone Wars. Give us an opportunity to see Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen as Obi-Wan and Anakin in their prime once again. Go even further back and show Anakin as a young apprentice struggling with the death of Qui-Gon and him missing his mother. Show us an even deeper look at the relationship between these two characters and their transition from mentor and pupil to brothers in arms to mortal enemies. That is the Obi-Wan movie I wanted, or even a series if it had to be. What I didn't want was this sloppy, cheap, hatchet job that was yet another example of a studio feeding us slop and expecting us to eat it like the hogs they think we are. And this is all an even bigger shame because they've backed themselves into a corner now. Sure, they could still make an Obi-Wan movie, but this show, it kind of soiled it. Not only did it already hit the story beats you'd want to hit in that trilogy of films, but it's also taken away any interest that general audiences may have had in the films. And first world problems, I know, but it honest to God breaks my heart that not only us hardcore Star Wars fans, but just movie fans in general were robbed of the opportunity to go to the movie theater and watch Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader clash swords one more time on the big screen. Their rivalry is up there with Batman and the Joker, Rocky and Apollo, God and Satan, and this rematch and revisiting of their iconic characters with two iconic movie stars returning to the role, it just deserved better. It deserved a better story, it deserved better production, and in my opinion, it deserved to be seen on the big screen where, quite frankly, these characters and just Star Wars in general belong. And look, this series isn't all bad. It had some killer moments, and Hayden and Ewan brought it. I just wish that everyone else, especially the higher ups in charge, had brought it as well. But those are just my thoughts. I want to hear yours. Is it too late to do a proper Kenobi movie? Will we ever see Ewan McGregor back in the role of Obi-Wan? Will we get a Kenobi season 2? Do you want a Kenobi season 2? Let me know down in the comments below, or you can at me on Twitter, or you can catch me on our Discord. Links to that in the description below. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.